other restrictions, they might also broadly count as conflict of interest, but the ethics law puts them or categorizes them, slightly differently as their own categories of things that you should avoid. One is called prestige of office, and this one simply says that no city official or employee should intentionally use the prestige of their office or position for their own private gain or that of another. And that's when you think about how you're using your official title, your city email, city letterhead, things like that. If you're trying to achieve something private in that and not doing city business, that could potentially reach a prestige of office concern. So what you ask is, what are you trying to achieve by that communication or that email? And I know the problem often comes in here when we use our smartphones to quickly, we're very busy, we might get a work email that comes in, or we might get a personal email that comes in, and we quickly respond from our work account or something like that. We really need to be careful there because, again, that's when a prestige of office concern might come in. Example would be, say somebody wants you to provide them with a reference, not somebody who's worked for the city or that you've supervised in your official role, but a relative or someone as a friend wants you to provide a reference, and you do so on city letterhead or using your title. That technically could count as trying to get something for someone else while using your city, the prestige of your city office. So these are just some good potential scenarios to keep in mind.
And clearly, we remember that for elected officials, they're allowed to do usual and customary constituent services. So, trying to get something from a city agency for one of your constituents, that's sort of in the general nature of your job.
The ethics law also says you need to keep confidential information confidential. You shouldn't use for your own economic benefit confidential information that you've gained in your work for the city. That's kind of common sense. I was a little surprised that this was in the ethics law, but it is. And I guess that's because it looks a little bit like you're abusing your position. So abuse of your position could kind of qualify in these prestige of office or confidential information concerns. This one is for people involved in procurement. Somebody who assists a city procurement agency or employee in preparing a bid request or an RFP or some other kind of procurement document may not then turn around and submit a bid for that procurement. Or that outside person who's assisting you isn't then allowed to turn around and bid on that RFP if it looks like they might be using their insider knowledge to get an advantage. It doesn't include things where an agency has asked for potential vendors to just provide descriptive literature or technical data or something like that, or to submit written comments. It's actually specific scenarios where you're maybe using a consultant to help put together an RFP or contract or request for a bid, and then someone affiliated with that party ends up bidding on it. Again, that looks like they're using their insider knowledge. Another sort of fun category in the ethics law has to do with hiring family members. Interestingly, though, this only applies to elected officials, at least by the ethics law. There may be agency policy or HR policy that you would need to look into, but as a general matter, elected officials can't use public funds to employ one of their own relatives or that of any other elected official. And the definition of relative here is a lot broader than the definition of disqualifying relative that we discussed earlier. So it includes a lot more people. I mean, I should say there could be other abuse of power issues if it looks like you're hiring your family members and then giving them special benefits. But this is something that should probably be looked at from an HR policy perspective. All right, so financial disclosure requirements. I'm sure many of you are already aware that you might or other people in your agency might have to file financial disclosures. Who has to file financial disclosure statements under the ethics law? There's part of me that says it would be a whole lot easier if all city employees and officials had to file financial disclosure statements, because right now the law is a little complex about who's supposed to file. It says that all city elected officials have to file. It says that all officials and non-clerical employees of a lot of different city agencies have to file. And non-clerical means any compensated employee who is not employed solely in a secretarial or custodial capacity. The ethics law lists most city agencies by name, and then lists the people within those agencies who are supposed to file. And some of those just say all non-clerical employees. So anybody who's not just doing, secretarial or custodial work.
Members of most city boards and commissions.
Candidates for elected positions in the city have to file. And then sort of the catch-all is individuals filling any procurement or enforcement or legislative type of function in the city would need to file. Agencies could designate more people to file if you'd like. The agency head could designate everyone in the agency to file if they'd like. There are a few different deadlines here depending on your class of affiliation here. So for elected officials, they have to file on or before January 31st. For other current officials and employees, they have to file on or before April 30th. And then if you're running for a city office, you have to file it no later than filing your certificate of candidacy. If you're a new employee coming in, you need to file the statement within 30 days of your start date. And then if you're leaving city service, you need to file within 60 days of your departure. You can also file amendments for any past calendar years, or if new events arise, or you have some significant new interests come up, you can file amendments at that point. And generally for the annual statements and the entry statements, the period that it covers is the previous calendar year.
So as far as content goes, what you do need to disclose is your real property interests. And
if you rent property as a renter, you still technically have a type of interest in that property, and it could potentially raise conflicts of interest, depending on something that might have to do with that property or that property's owner. So it's good to keep in mind that even if you rent, you need to disclose that under the real property section. You have to disclose business entities that you or a family member are affiliated with, and that's really whether or not those entities do business with the city. Any gifts that have been given by anybody who does business with the city. So that's broader than the controlled donors here. It would include any gifts that you receive from controlled donors, but it's broader than that. You do have to include secondary employment or boards you might sit on. You have to disclose, as well as some significant sort of debts that you might owe to parties, other family members employed by the city, other sources of income. And then elected officials have one additional requirement. They have to report certain payments that were made to their business entities. We've really worked hard to try to make this clear in the instructions on the financial disclosure part of our website. And we're working hard with BCIT to try to make sure that the online system captures all of this in a relatively easy way. So you should be aware there are some penalties for late filing. The board can issue a $10 per day late fee, and then there are a number of escalating steps that happen if you keep being late in filing, up to referral to your HR coordinator and up to the OIG. And then potentially, if you're 60 days late, the ethics board could ask you to be suspended without pay. Financial disclosure process is important. What it does, it kind of serves a twofold function. It helps you think through the types of interests that you have, in real property and businesses, and the interests that your relatives have, to think through when there could be potential conflicts of interest. It also aids public transparency because the law requires that those financial disclosure statements can be publicly viewed. The only thing that's kept off of the public view is your sort of home address or your principal residence. The law does protect that information. So it's not as if a random member of the public could look up your financial disclosure statement and then see where you live. A few other requirements of ethics code. The ethics code defines official sort of very specifically. It means any elected officials, the heads of any departments, heads of any bureaus or divisions within the departments, some board members, and sort of executive secretaries or directors to certain boards. Those individuals, when they come in, need to sign and file what's called a conflicts affidavit within 6 months of starting. That's a document that we have on the ethics board's website, and it's now part of a new ethics notice that we're giving to new employees. And that says basically, that the official understands the conflict of interest provisions of the ethics law and they're not currently in violation of them. There's also required ethics training just for officials, but since we've been rolling out this sort of new training platform, we're going to be recommending that all employees end up taking ethics training. There's no problem with being over-inclusive in either financial disclosure filings or the ethics training. The code just sets sort of the threshold, but you can easily go over that, and we recommend it for trainings. I'm glad that all of you have joined us for this training, even if technically you might not count as an official under the code. The board also has an enforcement role and a complaint process in case it does receive complaints about ethics violations against officials or employees. We've instituted an online complaint process. Anybody can fill out this form online or a PDF that alleges that someone's in violation of the ethics law. And then under the law, there are certain steps that we have to take as ethics board staff. We have to conduct a preliminary review, present those findings to the ethics board itself, and then the ethics board can present the person who's alleged to have been in violation. It can present them with an opportunity to cure that violation without it going any further or there being any sanctions. If the opportunity to cure the violation doesn't arise or it's not taken for whatever reason, the board can offer a hearing on the matter. If it finds that there's been an ethics violation, following the hearing, it take a number of actions. They can issue cease and desist orders, they can issue reprimands, they can refer the matter to the appropriate disciplinary authority, including a recommendation for censure or removal. The board can also then seek judicial relief by filing something in court if it finds a violation. It can ask the court to order the person to stop violating the ethics law. It can impose a penalty of up to $1,000 for each day that the person is in violation. And in some circumstances, it can even request the court to void the act or the official act or decision that happened as a result of a conflict. And of course, just like the OIG can, if the ethics board in its investigation finds that there might be grounds to believe that there's some criminal wrongdoing, it has to promptly refer that for appropriate criminal prosecution.
I'd encourage you to check out the Ethics Board's website. We've done a lot of work on trying to update that and make it more user-friendly.
Contact us anytime. This general email address, ethics@baltimorecity.gov. We try to get you a response no later than a day or two. We like to primarily think of ourselves as being available, up front to proactively help think through issues before they become a problem, to provide guidance on questions, before they make a headline, or even if you're just unclear about what particular ethics requirement might be. I really want to thank you all for being here, and feel free to be in touch at any time with any questions.